Fast fashion isn't free. Someone somewhere is paying. That is a quote by Lucy Siegel, which has clearly stated how the impact of fast fashion is rampant, and we must raise our awareness. Even though we, as consumers, may be able to afford clothes for a cheaper price, fast fashion comes with a price tag with a handful of consequences. It is important to know how fast fashion affects the environment as well as the welfare of the workers. Hi, my name is Yam Aaron S, Palomo, and it is a lesson I plan to share with all of you today. Did you know that 3 out of 5 fast fashion garments end up in a landfill? We are living in a world of fast fashion, a term Merriam-Webster defined as an approach to the design, creation, and marketing of clothing fashion that emphasizes making fashion trends quickly and cheaply available to consumers. Roughly 150 billion clothing items are produced every year. With fashion trends changing quicker and fashion seasons getting shorter, cheap clothing is purposely being made poorly in order not to last, which contributes to the 2 million tons of clothes being thrown away annually. There was a sudden rise in online shopping apps throughout this pandemic, and buying clothes online became more accessible than ever. I'm sure most, if not all, have purchased a fast fashion item. Due to its low pricing and wide style range, it is no wonder that fast fashion became mainstream and has grown exponentially ever since. When we get dressed in the morning, we usually do not think about who made our clothes and where they came from. Getting dressed is a daily habit that we all perform, and being mindful about it can be impactful. It is easy to get swept with all the new styles and trends, but we only need a moment to realize that these cheap items of clothing come with a price. Fast fashion is a term used to indicate the strategies retailers adopt to deliver emerging trends quickly. As fashion cycles become increasingly fast-paced, it forms unsustainable production techniques to keep up with the consumer demands and increase profit margins. By moving the manufacturing overseas to impoverished countries with weak or non-existent labor and environmental regulation, fast fashion companies are able to mass-produce cheap clothing to satisfy short-lived consumer fashion trends. The fast fashion industry has been linked to environmental harms, labor exploitation, and inferior product quality. In today's presentation, I would like to further discuss the concept of fast fashion, how it is being produced, and its environmental impacts. Most of our clothes from fast fashion are made in countries in which workers' rights are limited or non-existent. Production sites are regularly moving locations on the lookout for ever cheaper labor costs. The workers in fast fashion industries are vulnerable to discrimination, bad treatment, low wages, and long working hours. They're often imposed to hazardous working conditions and exploitation. Even the European Parliament uses the term slave labor to describe the current working conditions of garment workers in Asia. Garment workers are often forced to work 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're being overworked but extremely underpaid because 93% of fast fashion brands aren't paying their garment workers a living wage. Employees usually work without ventilation and breathe in toxic substances in unsafe buildings. On top of that, clothing workers regularly face verbal and physical abuse. In some cases, when they fail to meet their daily target, they are denied breaks and are prohibited to drink water. Accidents, fires, injuries, and diseases are commonplace occurrences in textile production sites. One example is infamous collapse of the Rana Plaza in 2013, killing 1,134 garment workers in Dhaka, Bangladesh. It has shed light on the unacceptable working conditions of the whole fashion industry to the world. According to a report by UNICEF, 170 million children are employed in the fashion industry, with many making textile and garments. Child labor is a particular issue for fashion because much of the supply chain requires low-skilled labor, and some tasks are even better suited to children than adults. Our report found evidence of forced child labor in the fashion industry in Argentina, Bangladesh, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Turkey, Vietnam, and even our country, which is the Philippines. In South India, for example, 250,000 girls work under the Sumagali scheme, a practice that involves sending young girls from poor families to work in a textile factory for 3 or 5 years in exchange for money that is below the living wage. In addition to that, the findings from the book Human Trafficking Around the World, Hidden in Plain Sight, stated that there are government-sanctioned work-study programs in China that were simply a valid means to supply school children to factories for forced labor. The children face dangerous conditions and excessive hours with mandatory overtime. These are just some examples of the hundreds of thousands of children being negatively affected by the fashion industry. Fast fashion is a clothing supply chain model that is intended to respond quickly to the latest fashion trends by frequently updating the clothing products available in stores. Major retailers like H&M and Zara have adopted fast fashion by introducing new clothing designs to stores every 3 to 5 weeks. With the demand for fast fashion increasing, the industry results in unsustainable ways to meet up those demands. The fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world, just after the oil industry. Production processes in the textile industries use chemicals and non-renewable resources that harm the environment. With that information, the environmental damage is increasing as the fashion industry grows. It's hardly a secret anymore that fashion is one of the most polluting industries in the world. Moreover, in most countries in which garments are produced, untreated toxic wastewaters from textile factories are dumped directly into the rivers. To put this into perspective, textile dyeing requires toxic chemicals that subsequently end up in our ocean. Approximately 20% of the wastewater worldwide is attributed to this process, which accumulates over time. Wastewater contains toxic substances such as lead, mercury, and arsenic, among others. Furthermore, it takes 10,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of cotton. These are incredibly harmful to the aquatic life and the health of millions of people living by those riverbanks. Synthetic materials are the primary culprits that cause plastic microfibers to enter our ocean. To be exact, approximately 35% of all microplastics are from these synthetic materials. To further lower the price, fast fashion industries turn to materials that may be of low quality. For example, many of the fibers are made of polyester, consisting of plastic, and these tend to release far more carbon emission than cotton. Furthermore, plastic is slow to degrade in the ocean. When plastic finally breaks down, it creates a toxic substance with a harmful impact on the marine ecosystems. As these plastic microfibers cannot be removed, they end up in the human food chain through aquatic life, causing many negative health effects. Clothing has become more readily available than ever. The average person throws away around 81 pounds of clothing yearly. By thinking of the garments we wear as short-term tools, rather than long-term investments, we contribute to the wasteful consumption patterns that inevitably lead us towards drastic climate change. Due to the short life cycle of fast fashion garments, most clothing items are thrown away within 1 year, resulting in millions of tons of plastic microfibers being dumped into the ocean. The current report shows that 62 million metric tons of apparels were consumed globally. Due to how affordable the clothing is and how new trends convince consumers to seek out more, the value of clothes may diminish in the eyes of consumers. 57% of all discarded clothing ends up in landfills. The landfill starts to pile up, then the trash is moved to an area to be incinerated. This process poses multiple public health and environmental dangers to the people who live in nearby communities, as large amounts of poisonous gases are released as a result of burning landfills. Sass Brown once said, "Fast fashion is really far from cheap. It may be cheap in terms of the financial cost, but very expensive when it comes to the environment and the cost of human life." I hope that my speech has made you aware of the environmental and labor impacts produced by the fast fashion industry. With the knowledge you have gained, I hope that you now know how and where your clothes come from, and their real cost. Once again, my name is Yam Aaron S, Palomo, and thank you for your time.